Alright, today I want to show you how to put together the grid for the gradebook application for Module 5. So the code we're looking at here is already posted in Canvas, so you can get it, play around with it in a Replit, copy and paste whatever you need from it into your own. What I've written is both a view and a template that is able to display a grid of input elements inside of a form, and just to let us know what those form named input elements look like when that data is received. My template also has a table at the bottom listing all the key value pairs. A GET request isn't going to display any key value pairs. It's only listing keys that are provided with a POST request and the values of those keys. So let's start with the view. The code for both GET and POST in my class-based view is identical, except that there is no dictionary of POST key values and values inside of the GET request. So I am displaying a grid of input elements, and I've written a nested loop in my template that uses a list of row headings and a list of column headings to construct the grid. So if you look down below, my grid has rows A, B, C and columns 1, 2, 3, but I can change what those columns are. Now the list has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the column list, and maybe the row list, instead of ABC, it's ABC Frank. We can name them whatever we'd like. So now instead of having 3 rows and 3 columns, we have 4 rows and 5 columns. So you can modify that code to fit whatever you need your input grid to do. In the case of assignment 5, you need a row for every student and a column for every grade element. So you just got to construct a row of students, a list of students named row, a list of grade elements named column, and provide those as the context to code like my template code. Of course, you'll write your own page, but at least for the grid part, you can just take the code I've written. So this would be useless if I couldn't input new values. I couldn't say, okay, so the value for column 1 row A is 17, and the value for column C row 2 is 55, and column Frank row 5 is 3 question marks. When I submit this form, I'm using the POST method for submit. And inside of a request object, there is a data structure called a query dictionary that allows for multiple values with the same key, called POST. And the POST object has a method that converts it into a regular Python dictionary. So I'm just getting that dictionary and calling it out. This is a dictionary of all of the named input element value pairs. So I have a named input element A1 or a named input element Frank underscore 3, and it tells me the value of that element. We'll look at the template code in a second. Let's just submit this. So Django has that CSRF token that makes sure that someone can't hijack my data. And so that's one of the key values inside of the post dictionary. I didn't write it. Django put it there. That is my CSRF token. But I did input a value for row A column 1, and I also input a value for row C column 2, and I input a value for row Frank column 5. So in my template code, each one of those cells, each one of those empty input elements is named row underscore column. All right, let's go back and look at that template. So first of all, it is a form. So I'm sending the form to the base URL for my application, the home page, if you will, with a post method. All forms need to have a CSRF token. And then my form contains a table. The first row of the table is the column headings. So I have a for loop, a template for loop, that iterates through all the column names and displays them in bold text as a table heading. I begin with an empty table heading in this row because I need space for the column of row names. So this bold ABC on the left of my table needs to have a position in the first row for that column as well. And in the first row it's blank. I don't want to label this row names. I guess I could. This is the column of row names. I just leave it unlabeled and then I label each column. So that's the first row of my table, column headings. And then all the other rows in my table are generated with a nested for loop. For each row in my row list, print as a heading the name of that row. So if I'm working on the first row, that would be A. Then for each column, drop down an empty input element. For your application, you'll have to modify this slightly. These input elements shouldn't be empty. They should contain whatever value was already stored in the database. So you'll want to populate the grid using the value attribute with any grades that have already been entered. If necessary, I'll put up a video for that tweak too. But starting here, they're all empty, but what I need to do is name them. I have to give each of these input elements a name that I can retrieve from the request object when I process this data. So I'm naming each one of these input elements by its row and column with an underscore in between. So this input element would be B underscore 2, or the one in the upper right hand corner is A underscore 3. They're all text input elements. That's just what you'll want to use for the application as well. In the code in your view, you'll want to turn text into numbers for grades, but we're gathering text. That's exactly what you want to do in your application. And so I loop through all the columns, and that finishes the first row. Then I go to the next row, print out the row heading, and then do all of its input elements, one per column. Finally, it is a form after all, I need a submit button. Now the last part of this template isn't something you'll need in your application. I'm just showing you, illustrating, this is the data that is being sent to me. You're not going to want to show that on a web page in your application. You're just going to process the data. So you would not have this table of key value pairs in your web page, but you will need to access this data. So you'll want to look at a key, break it down into a name, a student's name, and a grade item. So there's an underscore character between the student name and the grade item. If this was the grade book, the student might be named A. Pardon me. The student might be named A, then there's an underscore, then there's the grade item, maybe 1. So that would be telling me that the value is associated with both a student and a grade item. You're going to have to parse these keys, break them apart. Look for the underscore. Everything to the left of the underscore is the student name. Everything to the right of the underscore is the value for that grade item. So this is just the first thing I wanted to show you. Wanted to do it last night, but I was unable to get through a presentation without coughing. But tonight I'll do another one, and I think next I want to show you how to set up your models so that you can have a grade that is associated with both a student and a grade item. So while Django does support many-to-many elements, I find that kind of hides the mechanism of having a join table in the database. So I'm just going to create a new model that joins together students and key values. That's how we get this grid of information into the database. But that's looking ahead. I'll get that video up tonight. The code for this one is in Canvas. You should be able to see it below the link you used to get to this video, and get working on the app, even though its due date is extended because it wasn't posted on time. The due date is going to come quick. This one's a little more complex. So do start trying to work on the app, and I will continue to provide guidance with these videos as needed. Send me emails if there's a thing you want me to talk about. I'll be happy to do so.